Everybody dies, but some people die in really bizarre ways. Like this guy, Kurt Gödel, famous mathematician, total genius. He was so afraid of being poisoned that he accidentally starved himself to death.
For such a smart man, I'm sorry, but dude, you're a dumb.
Yeah, what the hell?
But from what I've researched, that's just the tip of this unusual death iceberg. So let's start with this first guy, Michael Malloy. It's New York in 1933. Michael Malloy was homeless, unemployed, and a raging alcoholic. Needless to say, he was going through a bit of a rough patch, but the people that he surrounded himself with, his friends, they made everything a lot worse. Michael had these 5 friends: Tony, Joseph, Francis, Hershey, and Daniel. Don't worry about remembering all those names though. I'm just going to refer to that whole group as the Murder Trust. Here's why. Instead of trying to help Michael out, give him a place to stay, find him a job, these guys came up with a very different plan. Step 1, take out life insurance policies on Michael. Step 2, murder Michael. Now, here's the thing. In order for these guys to actually cash out on the life insurance policies, they needed to make Michael's death look like an accident. Seems pretty simple, right? Well, things didn't exactly go how they hoped. They started by giving him an unlimited tab at a local speakeasy, just hoping he'd drink himself to death. But it never killed him. Then they started mixing in stuff with his drinks like antifreeze, icy hot, paint thinner, even rat poison. But none of that worked either. At some point, they replaced all of the liquor he was drinking with methanol. It smells exactly like the alcohol we drink, but it's way more toxic. Nothing! He's taking shots of methanol! Nothing! He is surviving all of this, okay? All right, forget the liquids. Let's try food. Let's give Michael a sandwich full of rotten sardines, carpet tacks, and just for good measure, we'll dump the whole thing in poison. Michael ate that entire sandwich, licked his fingers, and nothing.
What do you mean, nothing?
Nothing, he was fine.
Those are tacks!
Just shoot him.
Yeah, right? Like, dang.
Clearly, nothing that this guy ate or drank was going to kill him. They needed to change tactics. So, they tried to freeze him to death. They waited till he fell asleep, buried him in the New York snow, and then poured 5 gallons of freezing cold water on top of him. That might have actually killed Michael if the police hadn't come and rescued him just a few minutes later. At this point, the Murder Trust had just given up on making Michael's death look like an accident. They were desperate. Like, really, really desperate. So, one of the guys ran a cab service.
I wonder where this is going.
So, they hit Michael Malloy with a car going 45 miles an hour.
Did he survive?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The Murder Trust did eventually manage to kill Michael. While he was sleeping one night, they shoved a tube in his mouth and connected it directly to a gas line. He got carbon monoxide poisoning. Here's the problem. Michael's death no longer looked like an accident. It looked like a murder. So how was the Murder Trust going to collect on those life insurance policies? Well, luckily, one of them was actually friends with a doctor, and they were more than happy to declare Michael's cause of death pneumonia. So with the official paperwork in hand, they collected their life insurance checks, and for a while, they thought they got away with their scheme. But the police had heard about all the ways Michael Malloy had almost died. People were going around town calling him Iron Mike. So when they found out that he actually did die, they were pretty suspicious. They exhumed his body and discovered the truth. Michael Malloy didn't die of pneumonia, he was murdered.
These gotta be the dumbest group of murderers
I've
ever heard in my life.
Well, I mean, think about how long it took him to even do the murder. This is the worst group of murderers.
That's true.
It didn't take long for police to track down the 5 members of the Murder Trust. After all, they were the only people in the whole world that had life insurance policies on Michael. Every single one of them was arrested, and even though Hershey managed to scrape by with just life in prison, the other 4 guys all got sentenced to the electric chair. And unlike with Michael, it only took 1 try to kill them.
I feel like moral of the story, use a gun. So what's the next one?
So the next one takes place in the Great White North, Toronto, Canada, 1993. Gary Hoy was a successful lawyer working for the Holden Day Wilson law firm. He'd been there for almost 15 years, and now he had this big fancy office on the 24th floor of the Toronto Dominion Center. It's this massive group of buildings right in the heart of downtown Toronto. His office had just an incredible view. Anyway, on July 9th, 1993, Holden Day Wilson was throwing a small party for some of the new students that were going to be working at the firm in the fall. And apparently, Gary had this party trick he always performed for new students, and it was that party trick that led to his death. Let me explain. When Gary got his office on the 24th floor, the person that was showing him around said the TD Center had some of the strongest windows on the planet. They were completely shatterproof. So, to show just how strong the windows were in the TD Center, Gary would slam himself directly into the glass. Again, this is something he'd done plenty of times before, and the glass had never shattered. So he gathers around a crowd of new students, takes a running start, and slams his shoulder right into the glass.
Yeah.
And to everybody's surprise,
But not mine.
he bounced right off.
Oh.
Yeah, he just bounced right off. He just
Okay,
bounced
never mind. It was to my surprise.
Yeah, just bounced right off the glass. And if Gary had stopped there, if he had not gotten cocky, then he might have survived to do that little stunt at the next party. But he pressed his luck. He went to slam his shoulder into the glass again, and technically, his hypothesis held up. The glass didn't shatter. But what it does do is just slips right out of the pane.
Oh, no.
He just fell 24 stories and hit the sidewalk.
Did the glass shatter when it hit the ground?
The glass did shatter when it hit the ground.
Boo!
And Gary obviously
Did as well.
died on impact, and his death ended up partially contributing to the closing of Holden Day Wilson Law Firm just 3 years later. They already weren't doing hot, and Gary's death didn't exactly help them in the press. The thing about this story that's so interesting to me, though, is his actual cause of death. Apparently, it was listed as a death by misadventure. And our final unusual death, it's gonna sound like a made-up wives' tale, but I'm gonna show you a piece of evidence at the very end of this that proves that it actually happened. It's 1909, and we're back in New York. 15-year-old George Spencer Malloy was working as an office boy at the Metropolitan Insurance Company. Basically, he was an assistant that just did whatever odd jobs needed to be done around the office. Now, George was a pretty shy kid, but he was apparently pretty popular with the ladies at the office, and it was actually that attention that led to his death. On February 15th, 1909, George went to work at the office, but it wasn't just another Monday. It was his birthday. So George walks into the office, and he's immediately met by all the ladies that work there. They wish him a happy birthday, and they tell him that to celebrate, they're gonna give him a kiss for every year old that he is. So 15 kisses. And that made George extremely uncomfortable.
Oh, he didn't like this attention.
No, not at all. Again, he was a pretty shy kid, and the ladies that worked at the office, they were older than him. They were in their 20s. So he's like, they're like, it's a little uncomfortable.
Okay,
It's a little bit weird.
I would say that's pretty weird.
Needless to say, George did not want these birthday kisses, but he figured he'd just be able to slip out at the end of the day and avoid the whole thing. He was wrong. By the time everyone was getting ready to leave, George once again found himself surrounded by all the women in the office. So he got up and sprinted for the door as they chased after him. But when he ran out of the building, he stumbled and he fell to the ground. All the women crowded around him. They thought they finally had George cornered. But then they noticed something. Blood was rushing through George's shirt. It was covering the sidewalk because apparently George had an ink eraser in his front pocket. Now, when we think about erasers, we think about the soft rubber tips at the end of pencils. But erasers back in the day, they were basically 6-inch long blades used for scraping ink off of paper. So George just had a knife sticking out of his chest and it pierced him directly in the heart. The women did call for help, but by the time it arrived, George had died. He bled out on the sidewalk. There was a brief investigation into his death, but police determined pretty quickly that all of this was just a freak accident.
I don't believe that happened.
Well,
I need to see this evidence.
let me show you the
got.
evidence.
That's insane. Wow.
I have a picture of George Spencer Malloy's headstone, and you can see right there it says that he died evading birthday kisses.
That is so
Somebody
nonsensical.
printed somebody did concrete work.
Somebody
to
chiseled
describe
that
all
out.
of that.
Somebody said this is history.